Okay, so good morning class.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
So, how's your day?
It's fine,
We're
sir.
fine, sir.
Okay, so that's good to hear. So before we begin, uh, let us let us the guidance of Almighty God and let us enlighten our mind to completely understand the lesson this morning. Mr. Danjo Fernandez, kindly lead the prayer.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Danjo Fernandez. So, before we begin, I have some reminders for everyone. So, here's our reminder. So, I would like to request everyone to turn off your microphone for you to hear me while I'm discussing. Just click the raise hand button and unmute it when you want to recite or you want to ask something. Did I make myself clear?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Okay, for checking of attendance, uh, Mr. Romasanta, kindly check the attendance first.
Yes, sir. There is no one,
So,
no one absent, sir. We are all
okay.
15, including one teacher.
Okay, that's good to hear. So, let's move forward for our first activity. So did you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, here's the mechanics of that activity. As a review for the past lesson, the teacher will call random student and let the student identify what electrical symbol is being presented by tapping the raise hand button. So it will serve as our review for our past lesson. So So our past lesson is all about electrical symbol. So what electrical symbol do you see in the presentation? So Mr. Rumasanta,
Sir, it is lump, sir.
okay, let's see if it's a lamp. Okay, it is a lamp or a bulb. So for the second one, okay, Danjo.
Sir,
Okay, I hear you, fuse. So Mr. Danjo is correct. It is a fuse. For the third one, oh, you're raising your hand again, Rainiel. So what electrical symbol is it?
breaker, sir. Circuit breaker.
Uh, no, it's not a it's not a breaker. So,
Sir,
oh, I hear you, Danjo. You hear ammeter. Yes, is it ammeter? For the fourth one, yes, Claire. Oh, I think he is now under what they call the internet collection. So, Mr. J Art.
Voltmeter, sir.
Oh, voltmeter. So, let's see. Yes, Mr. J Art got the correct answer. So, before we move forward, Mr. Danjo, because our topic is all about electrical symbols. So what do you learn about electrical symbols?
Sir, I learned that electrical symbols is important so that we can interpret drawings of in electrical or electrical plants, sir.
Okay, thank you, Danjo. So Mr. Danjo is correct because electrical symbol is using especially in schematic diagram for us to interpret a different kind of connection just like wiring diagrams. So let's move forward for our next activity. So this activity is entitled Ayusin Mo Ako. So here's the mechanics of our activity. Mr. Mark Venry, can you read the instruction or mechanics of our activity? Okay, I think Mark Venry is not around. Argel Terao.
The teacher will divide the class into two groups, the group A and the
Again. Okay, Miss Kimberly Apales.
Ayusin mo ako. The teacher will divide the class into two groups, the group A and group B. The teacher will present a jumbled letters using PowerPoint presentation. As the teachers say go, everyone should participate to arrange and figure out the word by tapping the raise hand button. The teacher will be the one to say what group tap the raise hand button first and have the opportunity to guess the jumbled letter word. The group who will gain higher points will be the winner.
Okay, thank you, Miss Apales. So, did the instruction clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's start. So, for the group A, it composed of 6 members, which is included Rainiel, Christine, Claire, Argel, Raymond, and Jessa. For the group B, J. Art, Danjo, Joshua, Daniel, Venre, and Jessica. Okay, let's begin. For the jumbled letter word number 1, for 5 points.
Sir, explosive.
Okay, Rainiel, explosive. Let's see. Okay, 1 point for the group of Rainiel. So, for the second word, for 5 points again.
Sir, flammable.
Flammable, sir.
Okay, Argel, flammable is correct. For the third one, for 10 points.
Oxidizing, sir.
Okay, Danjo, correct, oxidizing. For the fourth or the last jumbled letter word,
Corrosive, sir.
corrosive. Thank you, Danjo. You are almost correct because the number one jumbled letter answered by Rainiel, but you got the 3 correct answer. So congratulations to the group of Danjo because you are the winner for this activity. So, what do you notice about the pictures presented? Are you familiar with this kind of hazard? Yes, Daniel.
Yes, sir. What is it, sir? Can you please repeat the question, sir?
So, what do you notice about the pictures presented in our PowerPoint presentation? And
Okay,
are you familiar with this kind of hazard?
I see a man which electrocuted, already electrocuted. And then I see a hand with burn.
Okay, so are you familiar with this kind of hazard?
Not really, sir.
Okay, so if you're not, the
Okay.
hazard that I presented is can cause because of electrical fault or electrical hazard. So let's begin because our topic for today is all about hazard and electrical in its preventive measures. So let's define first what is hazard. So kindly read Mr. Romasanta.
Hazard. When we refer to hazards in relation to occupational safety and health, The most commonly used definition is a hazard is a potential source of harm or adverse health effect on a person or persons.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romasanta. So it says there that it refers the relation to the occupational safety and health. That most commonly definition is a hazard. So it is a potential source of harm or adverse health effect on a person or a persons. So the next one should be electrical hazard, which is our main topic for today. So kindly read, Mr. Daniel.
Hazard. When we refer to hazards in relation to
Uh,
occupational safety and health, the most
Mr.
commonly used.
Mr. Daniel, may I butt in? Kindly read the second.
Ay, okay. Sorry, sir. Okay, electrical hazard. It can be defined as a serious workplace hazard that exposes workers to burns, electrocution, shock, arc blast, fire, or explosion. By identifying these hazards and understanding how they happen, we can take steps to protect ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambrosio. So, in other words, it can define a serious workplace hazard. It is an hazard or it is a hazard that probably can get or what you called experience while doing electrical tasks. So the first one, that electrical hazard that can possibly attain if we doing electrical jobs without any PPE is contact with power lines. So kindly read. Yes, Danjo.
Contact with power lines. Overhead and buried power lines can carry extremely high voltage, sometimes exceeding 700,000 volts. Although fatal electrocution is the main hazard, severe burns and falling from elevated levels can also be concerns. What typically happens is that a piece of equipment the worker is using, such as a crane or ladder, comes into contact with the power line, which delivers a shock to the worker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fernandez. So how can we prevent this kind of hazard? So I have here 5 preventive measures for us to prevent this kind of hazard. So the number one is when working outside, observe and keep in mind that placement of power lines. The number two, stay at least 10 feet away from overload power lines at all times. Observe this same distance with equipment. The third one, use non-conductive wood or fiberglass ladders when working near power lines. And for the number four, ensure that no digging is undertaken without first checking for underground power lines. Look for posts and signs designating underground lines. Always confirm its safety to dig by contracting your utility company. And for the last one, if work must be done near a power line, contact the utility company first. It may possible to de-energize the line or come up with guard to increase safety or to increase a worker's safety. So this kind of hazard is usually encountered when doing a power lines. So this is a power line. So in Tagalog, we called it poste. So for the next one, it should be the no ground fault protection. Kindly read, Mr. Argel.
No ground fault protection. This type of electrical hazard is often created due to excessive wear on power tools and equipment. This can cause breaks in insulation and exposed wire. Without ground fault protection, contact can send electricity through a worker's body.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tirao. So no ground fault protection. So this is a electrical hazard that often created due to excessive wear of power tools and equipment. So how to prevent this kind of electrical hazard? So I have here four preventive measure for us to prevent this kind of hazard. So for the number 1, always inspect equipment and power tools prior to each use. Make this part of your standard for work routine. The number 2, place a warning tag on any equipment that is unsafe and take it out of use until it's fixed. The number 3, only use power tools according to their manufacturer's intended use and instructions, so use it properly. So the number 4 should be use JFCI or ground fault circuit interrupters on all 120 volts or single phase or 15 to 20 amperes receptacle. So imagine if you don't use a proper tools or proper tools, should I say proper voltage or proper ampere, it can cause a what they call hazard. So for the third one, the pass to ground is missing or discontinuous. So Mr. Rumasanta, can you read?
Pass, pass to ground is missing or discontinuous. This occurs when the power supply for electrical equipment is not properly grounded or the path has been broken. This can even happen with good equipment, either due to extreme work conditions or rough treatment of the equipment. Electrical grounding is where a point in a circuit is at zero voltage. A broken electrical cord or damaged power tool can use a lack of proper grounding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rumasanta. So, this hazard will occur when the power supply of electrical equipment is not properly grounded. So, it can cause the pass ground is missing or discontinuous. It can cause a electrical hazard. So, how can we avoid this kind of hazard? So, I have here a 4 preventive measure for this kind of electrical hazard. So, number 1, be sure to ground all power supply system, electrical circuits, and electrical equipment. Number 2, frequently inspect electrical system to ensure that the path to ground is continuous. Electrical system can be as simple as batteries powering a flashlight to as complex as those in a jet airliner. With more complex system, you may need to get a certified professional to inspect the system. And for the number 3, never remove ground prongs from power cords or extension cords. Use double insulated tools and equipment. And for the last one, preventive measure, ground all exposed metal parts of equipment, ground metal parts of non-electrical equipment as specified by OSHA or your governing regulatory agency. So let's move forward to the next electrical hazard. So equipment not used and manner prescribed. So kindly read, Kimberly.
Anytime we use a tool or equipment for purposes it wasn't meant for, we are quite possibly voiding all of its safety features. We may inadvertently damage equipment and endanger other workers or ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Miss Apales. So this kind of hazard is what they called one of the most commonly hazard that can encounter while doing electrical tasks. So how can we avoid or prevent this kind of hazard? So I have here three preventive measure for us to prevent this kind of hazard. Number 1, use only equipment approved by regulatory safety agencies. Number 2, always use equipment in accordance with the manufacturer's instruction and never modify cords or the equipment in any way. And the number 3, if equipment or cords have been fabricated in your shop, ensure that they met all regulatory safety standards. So, if we are using electrical tools, just use it for specific use. For example, we are using pliers. We all know that pliers is using for stripping, cutting, and uh, handling small tools or materials. So just use the electrical tools properly. So the number 4, or the second to the last, is the improper use of extension or flexible cords. So Mr. Raymond Ferrer, okay, I think Mr. Ferrer having a bad connection. So I will call Danjo again. Danjo, kindly read the improper use of extension or flexible cord.
Improper use of extension or flexible cords. It is easy to have wear and tear on all types of electrical cords with normal use. This can expose and loosen wires, which may create a shock hazard. Cords that have been modified increase the chance of shock unless they meet all safety agency standards. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, each year electric extension cords account for 4,600 residential fire killings and injuring about 300 people. The most frequent causes of these fires are short circuits in the cord, overloading, damage, or misuse.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fernandez. So improper use of extension cord or flexible cord is one of the main cause of electrical hazard. So just like using what they call female plug, when we plug in a lot of male plug, it can cause fire. So if we want to avoid or prevent this kind of hazard, I have here preventive measure for this kind of electrical hazard. So number one, only use factory assembled cord sets. Number two, only use 3 wires type extension cord. So the only use 3 wire type extension cord is all about using electrical female plug or receptacle or convenience outlet with a 3 hole. So the third hole is used for grounding system. So number 3, remove cords from receptacle by pulling on the plugs, not the cord. Number 4, regularly audit all extension and flexible cords for damage. Make this a proactive, scheduled activity. Damaged cord and those not properly rated must be taken out of service immediately. So I have here additional electrical hazard that we may encounter while doing electrical tasks. So I have here electric shock. Electric shock occurs when a body becomes a part on electrical current. Example of electric shocks includes a person may come in contact with both conductors in a circuit. Number 2, touching a live wire and an electrical ground. And the third one, a person may provide a path between an ungrounded conductor and the ground. So how can we prevent this kind of electric hazard? So I have here 8 ways. So the number 1, keep the appliances away from moisture and water. Number 2, never connect or disconnect under load. And number 3, install GFCI outlet. So GFCI is an outlet used for our protection. So other one, be careful with the capacitor. Use insulated tools. Turn off the power. Check for improper or faulty wiring for us to prevent this kind of electrical hazard. So another one, electrical burns. Yes, Mr. Romasanta,
Sir,
kindly read the
electrical burns.
presented text.
Electrical burns. So, the result of electric current flowing flow in the tissues. These burns may be skin deep or may affect deeper layers such as muscle and bones.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romasanta. So, electrical burns can cause because of electrical fire or electrical fault. So, as simply as that. So, I have also here the third one. Kindly read again, Mr. Romasanta.
Sir, repeat the question, sir.
Kindly read the three types of electrical burns.
Okay. So, electrical burns, arc burns, thermal contact burns. So, electrical, the result of electric current flowing the tissues. These burns may be skin deep or may affect deeper layers such as muscle and bones. Arc burns, the result of high temperatures produced by electric arcs or by explosions close to the body. Third one, thermal contact burns. Burns normally experienced from the skin contacting hot surfaces of overheated electrical conductors, conduits, or other energized equipment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romasanta, for reading the third one. Okay, for the next one, we have here electric arc blast. So, if the current is strong enough, the blast effect that can result from arcing can cause injuries and start fires. The power the power arc is a discharge of electricity through a combination of ionized air and vaporized conductor material. The conductive material is vaporized by temperature in an arc which can be as high as 35,000 Fahrenheit. So I have here two types of electric arc blast. The number one is the low energy arc that can cause violent explosion or blast in an atmosphere. And the second one is the high energy arc that can cause that can also damage equipment, causing metal to fly in an all direction. So the severity of electric shock is related to four elements. If the combination of these four elements is just right, uh, the shock can be severe or lead to electrocution. The number one should be amount of current. The number two, the length of time current is present. The number three, the path of current through the body. And the number four is frequency of the current. So, did you understand our lesson for today, class, especially to those electrical majors?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you understand, now let's move forward for our activity. So, our activity is entitled A Minute to Learn It or a minute to learn it. So, I will ask student to share or discuss about her or his takeaways to the important concept that they have learned in the discussion. So, as a president of this class, can you present what did you learn about this lesson, Mr. Danjo Fernandez?
Sir, I learned all about hazards, sir, in electrical, and we must be aware on that hazards for our safety.
Okay, very well said, Mr. Danjo. Mr. Danjo is correct. Hazard is important. Hazard is important to prevent because it can cause death. So for our second activity, it is a preventive illustration. In a clean piece of paper and pencil, draw simple illustration of preventing hazard in an electrical. I will give you 10 minutes to create an illustration or artwork. After the given time, I will call one student to present his or her work in the class. So, is the mechanics and instruction is clear for us or for the everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you may now draw or create an illustration. I will give you 10 minutes for this activity. Okay, are you done, class?
Yes, sir. We're done,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. J. Art, I want to see your artwork and share to everyone.
Yes, sir. So, sir, I draw a extension cord.
Okay,
So
so let
this
me see your.
is,
So what is all about?
I draw a extension cord na may maraming nakasaksak, sir.
Okay, so why draw this kind of illustration or artwork?
Sir, iwasan po natin yung pagsaksak ng marami sa extension cord because there are possible that can cause a fire, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. J. Art J. Art Dilac. So, for our uh, third activity, I called it Will It Stop? So, include all the names of the student in the wheel of name. I will spin the wheel of name to identify the student who will answer the given question. So, for the first question, why is it important to know the preventive measure and specific hazard? Yes, Mr. Ferrer.
Sir, it is important to know the preventive measure in a specific hazard in order for us to determine those ways that we can avoid those danger in electrical working area, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferrer. I think you have a lot of friends because you know how to prevent a what you call hazard. So the number two should be answered by Rainiel. Why do we need to know every hazard that we may encounter in electrical?
Why do we need to know every hazards that we may encounter? For our safety, sir.
Okay, a simple but sweet answer, Mr. Romasanta. Thank you for answering this question. So now let's move forward for our quiz for today. So here's the instruction for our quiz. For your quiz, using Microsoft Teams application, answer the 10 item questions. Choose the correct answer for each item. It will open exactly 9:50 a.m. and close exactly 10 a.m. So good luck, class. Okay, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now if you are done, I can give you now our assignment for today. So for our assignment, search for this following. So what is Ohm's law? Just take it note or take it down. So what is Ohm's law? Who proposed the Ohm's law and how to compute voltage using Ohm's law equation. So that's all for today, class. You may now leave the team.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Sige,
Bye,
sir.
sir. Thank you po.